Hello guys, how we doing? Welcome back to the channel. Hope everyone's okay. Thank you very much for tuning in. As always, very grateful. Shout out to all the subscribers. As always, welcome along anyone new. Let's talk about Jai Opetaia.
Undisputed. That's what I'm chasing. I want to call myself undisputed cruiserweight world champion. And then once it's done, then I can move up and I can, live my life. It is what it is. But I want to become undisputed cruiserweight world champion first.
I watched the recent interview on Talk Sport where they couldn't wait to get him off the set because he kept swearing.
I've been told there's a budget, he can have the whole thing.
It did slip out. We apologise for Jai's language.
The politics of this
Jai,
shit.
language. Yeah.
But I don't want to look back and go,
Whoops, there was another one. Quick apology from me for any of Jai's language that may have offended you out there.
But look, he was obviously talking about his up-and-coming fight with Cinkara, which, by the way, I made a video for. I went into a bit more detail about Cinkara's style and how they matched up and stuff like that. I'll leave the link up here because this video is going to be a bit different, but I have covered that fight already. I'll do a fight breakdown the week of the fight, but if you were interested on looking at a more style-based video on that fight, link in the description and up here. But this video I'm going to be talking about Opetaia's basically mindset right now. He sounds a bit frustrated, as you can imagine.
Man, it's been weird. I've been finding out different things every now and then, finding out on social media with who I'm fighting next. It's a bit of a journey, but what I've been told is I'm fighting Cinkara next, and then I want to try and push that fight as early as I can.
It's a weird sport, isn't it? When all you do is just go and blast everybody out and look really great doing it, and then get basically avoided. It seems. I know Ramirez is injured. He's just had some shoulder injury.
And then Jai's, it's a very frustrating process, and there's nothing that he can do about it. There's nothing we can do about it. Gilberto Ramirez done his shoulder. He had surgery. He's not fighting until next year.
I'm going to pull in some clips from Eddie Hearn, who's going to break down, some of the situation. I'm also going to talk about, because I like to cover some stuff on some science on this channel. I love it, and I'm going to be talking about the stretch shortening cycle.
If you look at world-class boxers, especially those from the Eastern nations and Cuba, you will always notice a quick elastic dip in a millisecond. It's so quick you don't even see it. This elastically loads the leg, and then you transfer it into the hip rotation and release it at the end of the fist. This is because of a phenomenon known as the stretch shortening cycle. And this occurs when you keep the transition between eccentric and concentric contraction very minimal.
And the amortization phase.
There's another phase, and that's called the amortization phase. Now this phase is really important for strength and power and speed.
Tony Sims also said that he'd give Jordan one more round. He has to produce something here, and he goes again. Referee Howard Foster looks on.
We're going to get a little geeky and a little scientific on you. It's basically I'm going to bring in some clips as well from some channels that I follow to really break it down, but it's actually very important especially for Jai's style, because he is so springy on his feet, right? He's kind of in the last couple of fights gone a little bit away from that, but he still has that quick shifty movement.
Squayo tries to come forward with that big left hand, but cannot find Opetaia.
And he's looking to step back and counter and bounce a little bit.
Yeah, Jai's going to start. There's a good shot. That is a good shot.
Previous to that, especially in the Breeders' fight, the first one particularly, he was bouncing a lot more using that Eastern European, what's called a pendulum step, where you bounce in and out, right? And his style is very, very similar to Eastern European, although it's a more heavy, more power orientated style version of it. It's very interesting, actually. I'd love to know where and how that style came about, because it's unique in itself, because it is, as I said, very Eastern European, but there's a lot of major power with that because he just blasts guys out. In fact, he just wrecks guys' faces when they get into the ring with him. He breaks their face.
Big shot.
his last fight with Squayo, broke his jaw.
Yeah, solid punch. And he knew straight away that Squayo, that something was amiss.
You saw what happened to David Naika, saw what happened to Jordan Thompson.
Again, referee Howard Foster looks on, and that's it.
Naika's actually fought just since recently in like a 6th rounder, so it's good to see him back. Jordan Thompson's actually got a fight lined up, but Jack Massey hasn't fought since, so it takes a while for these guys to get over such a beating. Do you know what I mean? He really puts it on dudes. And it's just, you know, he's just a savage animal. Obviously, it's one of the reasons I make so many videos about him, because he's basically the total package when you think about it. You know, from a spirit point of view, I mean, he's got an unbelievable spirit, unbelievable will. He's obviously a very fan-friendly style because he's so power-orientated, looking to go and take guys out. Very skillful. He's got the amateur background, and you know, he's always looking to improve. And you know, he's been really developing that right hook of his, which he spoke about.
He's taking his chances when he has them, is Squayo, but he just received a very big right hand.
Post Naika fight, which was a factor in the fight, and he really, when he tries to throw that right hook, I mean, he really, most punches, he just puts everything into it.
I said, what's it like having that looking cut? Oh, good shot from Jai Opetaia.
I mean, you can see he's just launching these punches.
He's going to go up, Carly. He's hurting. Jai Opetaia.
Trying to do as much damage as he possibly can, and it is a joy to see, really. Do you know what I mean? It really is. So he's getting frustrated now. Obviously, he's on the path to that Ramirez fight. He wants the Undisputed, which is the title of this video. Let me just move this a little bit. I can see the camera isn't quite right. He wants that Undisputed, right? That's something he's been banging on about. He wants the belts. I'm not OCD, I promise. It's just a little bit off. He wants those belts.
I want to call myself Undisputed Cruiserweight World Champion. And then once it's done, then I can move up and I can, you know, live my life. But right now, my eyesight's on belts.
He wants that WBO belt in particular, but he wants to be undisputed.
When he won the world title, the IBF, he said, I want the WBO, get me the WBO. And obviously, Billam-Smith had it at the time. Then he went and unified against Gilberto Ramirez. Because Ramirez is kind of in recess at the moment, they've ordered the interim title. So Jai's saying, I'll fight for the WBO interim title. Put me in against Billam-Smith, because Billam-Smith's been mandated to fight for that title. But that's very difficult to do when you're already a world champion in another governing body, and also you have a mandatory, which is Cinkara, which we agreed terms with. So that'll be next for Jai.
He wants that Ramirez fight. It does seem like, you know, even before Ramirez's injury, that they have been swerving him. It does seem like, you know, Billam-Smith, you know, he called him out, basically said, you could have the purse, bro. You know, it sounded like, you know, not a price yourself out, but, you know, seeing if he could, you know, wiggle his way around that fight. And Jai was like, yeah, just take the money, bro. I'll fight for nothing.
So, and then I've been told there's a $1 million budget, right? A $1 million budget to be on an undercard of Eubank and Ben between me and Chris Billam-Smith. And they offered it 50-50, right? So he said, I'm not fighting Jai unless I get a meal. Well, take the meal.
Yeah.
Take the meal.
That Jai first time round.
So he wants to get Cinkara out the way, Smith out the way, and then go for that WBO, right? And I don't think I've ever heard a fighter overlook 2 fights, right? I know he'll take each fight seriously when they come, of course he will, but in essence, he's really looking through both these guys. I think it's just because he's so confident they're not gonna pose him any problems. I think the Billam-Smith fight, to be honest, is actually a really dangerous fight for Smith, just because of his style. Doesn't move his head. He's quite easy to hit, and it's like I can see him getting brutalized, to be honest. Do you know what I mean? Because he's a very tough man as well, and he's a very courageous, brave guy. You know, the gentleman. He's the kind of guy that's like no contract, like a handshake. All right, we'll do this, but don't need any contracts. Jai's like that as well, I think. You know, I love when fighters do that. Old school, man of their word. We don't need a contract, but you know, obviously boxing, you know, they need contracts. But whatever. I like his energy, Billam-Smith. You know, I really do. Very classy guy. They both are, but you know, it's a rough fight for Smith, to be honest. Stylistically, I can see him getting badly beaten. But you know, the Cinkara fight, I'll touch on it briefly. You know, he's a kind of a wily, loosey-goosey, awkward fighter. You know, he's got a little bit of pop in there. He's obviously got a lot of self-belief. I know he's the mandatory, but I think he pulled out from injury. But you know, he's 40 years old. I went into, like I said, a bit more detail on that other video, so I can't remember exactly what I said in there, but I pulled up some clips and stuff like that, and I pulled up some mistakes that, excuse me, the Cinkara was making, so maybe go check that out. But yeah, then, you know, obviously the Billam-Smith fight looks like it could be on the Chris Eubank kind of Ben rematch. On the undercard there, and then Jai was saying like he just wants to force the fight with Ramirez.
When I fight him and I do what I do against him, they cannot deny it from there. Our unification has to come from there. Like what you're saying, oh, I haven't fought him, he was too early. There's always an excuse because of what I do to him.
But everyone thinks you're the monster, Jai. So the only reason they're not getting a Ramirez fight is because they're ducking you.
Which, you know, to be fair, Simon Jordan made a decent point, where he's like, well, they're not going to want to fight you if you're just going to walk through everybody, but he's just trying to force the issue. You got to love it.
How is Ramirez going to want to run into a ring with you after that?
Because he's a fighter. Yeah. We're fighters.
So is he not ducking you already, though?
Hey, I don't know.
Do you know what I mean? Fighters forcing the issue where you just beat everybody, and then you have, you know, hopefully pressure from the fans and stuff like that, and just keep, because he's saying at the end of the day, you know, he's like, Ramirez is a fighter, he's gonna want to fight, and you know, this is where it comes into the grey area of like ducking, where obviously there is some avoiding going on, but it's not always the fighter, you know, it's definitely the business side where you got De La Hoya, Golden Boy, and his team are probably looking at, I mean, Opetaia is not just a high risk, he's an extremely high risk, not just in terms of beating him, but what you have to go through. Even if you are, let's just say Ramirez's team do think they probably could beat him, they're going to have to go through an absolute tremendous amount, the most they've ever gone through to actually even get that win. That's if they were to win. I'd favour Opetaia, but there's a heavy amount of people that have, people that I respect on YouTube as well, that have been like, no, it's closer to a 50-50. They're, you know, maybe not as clued up on Opetaia as they might need to be, because I don't see that as a 50-50 personally, but I do think Ramirez, obviously, look, he's very tough, he's got a good chin, he's skillful, his skills are actually getting better and better, and you know, he does a lot of cute things in there, and you know, he presents a different challenge as well. So, but I would like to look at a bit more freshly if that fight ever gets made, to really, you know, do a more technical, detailed breakdown, because it's a tremendous fight nonetheless. But I do think De La Hoya's team are like, look, we got a good run at this cruiserweight. We got a couple of belts now. They're probably, as a business plan, they're like make it forecasting what they can do, you know, who they can fight, how much money they can get, all this stuff. And when you have a roadblock like Opetaia in the way, that kind of ruins your plans a little bit, because, like I said, not only are you probably, you know, expected to have an extremely tough fight, you might come out with some major injuries. You know what I mean? It's a high risk. Yes, there's a reward there, of course there is. He's got a belt, but you want to take the path of least resistance if you're the promoters, because that path, the path that Opetaia, it's like that path in Lord of the Rings, you know, that where the people of the dead or whatever they're called, they're like, you got to go through that.
Who enters my domain?
That's like the path, that's the Opetaia path. Well, look, let's talk about this stretch shortening cycle, because on this channel I do cover music and art, and you know, I've always found it a bit more of a difficult way into create music in because, you know, from Australia and Samoa, I don't live there obviously, so I'm not as familiar, because I'm a DJ really, and a part of the channel is like, sometimes I like to play music and DJ to the part of the world where I'm bringing the music to. So if you've got any suggestions requests, I'm all ears, you know. But yeah, I've always found it a bit more challenging to bring in music to that part of the world. Not because, you know, I just don't know. I just don't live there. Do you know what I mean? So I'm not familiar with what type of music's popular there, what type of music is fitting, right? So if you have any ideas, let me know. But I like to bring in music and I like to bring in science. And we're going to get into the science right now because it fascinates me. And this stretch shortening cycle is fascinating, right? And it is very applicable to Jai Opetaia and his style.
If you look at world-class boxers, especially those from the Eastern nations and Cuba, you will always notice a quick elastic dip in a millisecond. It's so quick you don't even see it. This elastically loads the leg and then you transfer it into the hip rotation and release it at the end of the fist. This is because of a phenomenon known as the stretch shortening cycle. And this occurs when you keep the transition between eccentric and concentric contraction very minimal. Then you utilize the elastic attributes of your muscles and tendons and you gain about a 10% improved power output and at a cheaper price. Because now the tendons, they aid in the movement, the elastic attributes of the tendons. If you had not used this, it would only be muscular effort to a large extent. And this is also why plyometric training or the shock method became a staple in the strength and power interventions of Soviet boxers. Because they wanted to improve the elastic energy utilization of the lower body, also known as reactive strength, because this will add another 10% of efficiency to the punching.
Because it is to do, as I said, I'm going to bring in some clips as I'm talking. It is to do with just that little phase in between the eccentric and concentric muscle contraction, right? There's something called an amortization phase.
As we're going down, for example, for vertical jump, we're dipping down. The muscles are lengthening, specifically our quads and our glutes. We're lengthening the muscle. So in this case, we're going through an eccentric muscle contraction. We're controlling the motion of lengthening. Then on the way up, we're going through a concentric muscle action. We're shortening the muscle and jumping up. Between those, between the eccentric and then the concentric, there's another phase, and that's called the amortization phase. Now this phase is really important for strength and power and speed. This phase is really where the stretch shortening cycle starts to give us our recoil. During the amortization phase, there's stored energy,
where basically it's like you're basically improving the elasticity in your muscle, right? It's fascinating. So back in the 60s, the Russians created it, plyometrics, right? And they were fanatics about sports science. You know, I've said this before on the channel. That Rocky IV movie was real. You know, they really went in and I forget the guy's name, Urashansky, I think it is, created it back in the 60s. And if you look at the style from even Uzbekistan fighters, I made a documentary on that, actually link up here. I went into great detail about this, their training and how they're using, you know, plyometrics and bouncing and hopping. And you see it with Madrimov and you see it with Bivol, and you know, he's not from Uzbekistan but Kazakhstan, not Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, and they have a very similar style, you know, and they use that bounce and that spring and that elastic energy stored in their legs, right? And that you can build that up from plyometrics. And I wonder if Opetaia does train like that. I know he trains quite hard, and you know, he trains, do see a lot of pad work and stuff like that, but I've never seen him do stuff like that. I'm not saying he doesn't, I just maybe it might be even more advantageous if he added that into his training. Do you know what I mean? But it's fascinating because when you see, I'm going to bring up a clip from Jordan Thompson, poor guy. Every time I do an Opetaia video, I'll bring up that Jordan Thompson clip because it is one of the most beautiful shots you will see based off of that style. And he's got that, what is called the pendulum step, and his foot speed is just outstanding.
He's also said that he'd give Jordan one more round. He has to produce something here, and he goes again.
And even still, his foot speed is so outrageously fast. It's like his relationship with the ground. I've referred to him as a ballerina before. Like, just, you know, it sounds a bit weird. I mean it as respectfully as possible, because his foot to ground relationship is unbelievable. And this is where he's using that stretch shortening cycle, right, in such a short phase where his feet just bounce. He's using the energy from his calves and he just springs off it and, you know, lands a ginormous punch to Jordan Thompson's mouth or face. And, you know, I'm surprised he didn't get knocked out from that, to be honest. That was such a clean shot. But yeah, no, that's the stretch shortening cycle. I'm going to be talking a bit more about that in the coming weeks because I want to understand it a bit more. I'm trying to squeeze in a Bud Crawford scientific look at his punches video before this fight Saturday. But you know, hopefully I'll have enough time. But anyway, that's it from me. Let me know your thoughts and on this situation with Ramirez. Any thoughts on the Billam-Smith fight, or the Cinkara fight? Have you seen him fight? And what your thoughts on all of it? Yeah, anyway, big shout out to anyone from Samoa and Australia. I've always come back for these videos. You know, I'm hoping to cover this Cinkara fight when it gets made. I know they're trying to push it through as quickly as possible, they were saying. And then, you know, the Billam-Smith fight, that's actually a really good fight. So hopefully I'll do a bit more of a detailed, I've tried to create a bit of art around it, you know, so I've got to have an idea for it to really work. I don't want to just do a video and then just talk about boxing. It's got to be artistic now. So, you know, if I don't make a video about it, it's because I can't find a way in. Do you know what I mean? It's got to have a theme. And for example, this Matthias Dalton Smith fight, I just did a capital punishment theme, which if anyone knows anything about hip hop, or even if you don't, it's like it's a loosely based off of an artist called Big Pun. And he made a track called Capital Punishment, and I remixed the beat and I played the beat. These videos take a while, do you know what I mean? But I love it. It's what I'm trying to do. So, and if you are new, welcome along. Smash the like button. You know, I would say subscribe, because sometimes people subscribe but they don't really know what they're getting themselves into. So don't subscribe. Yeah, anyway, look, that's it from me. Peace. I'm out of here. Have a great one.
Undisputed. That's what I'm chasing. I want to call myself undisputed cruiserweight world champion. And then once it's done, then I can move up and I can, you know, live my life. You know, it is what it is. But I want to become undisputed cruiserweight world champion first.
Boxing.